Hey, my name's Chris. Welcome to the install video for the aftermarket dust chute for the Hercules 12-inch miter saw. Up front, full design credit for this goes to my good buddy Jim Kramer out of Oregon. He's an awesome guy. We've been working together for the past several months, and this version of this design is completely his. And I'm helping to bring it to market. I want to give him all the credit up front. So let's look at the parts that you're either going to need to print yourself or purchase to get this thing accomplished. All right, let's get started. So the first thing you're going to need is this revision to chute. This is a 3D printed part. This top mounting bracket, this is a 3D printed part. And this end user connection and port, which is a 3D printed part. Aftermarket components, which I will provide kits, you will need are these 4 12mm cap screws, 2 heat set inserts, a piece of pre-cut rubber flap, and a piece of pre-cut extendable tube. If you're heat setting these, you're either going to need to use a soldering iron or a heat set gun. Jim's actually redesigned these now to accept standard flat nuts, and so there's a version where you don't need a heat gun at all. Okay, tools you're going to need a screwdriver with Torx bits, or just 2 Torx screwdrivers. This is a T25, and you'll also need a T20. You will also need a 4mm Allen wrench for these cap screws, and you're going to need a spring clamp to hold the guard out of the way. So those are the tools you're going to need. Let's go ahead and go into a little bit of initial assembly. So if you're buying this kit pre-printed, this will come assembled, but this rubber material goes into this slot like this, and you can secure it in place with a little bit of CA glue or hot glue. And if you ever have any stiffness issues here, you can actually run a bead of hot glue out like that on either side, and it'll add a little bit of stiffness and prevent that from sucking back in. Or if it starts to fatigue just due to wear and tear, that's a way that you can increase a little bit of stiffness. You're also going to want to heat set your female nuts into the plastic, and you can kind of splay this tubing out and thread it inside of here. Kind of got to help it out to get started. There we go. Just a little bit of forward pressure, and you can tell when it's seated because that'll happen. And we can go ahead and thread this side in also. Now, just a note, on the latest revision, there are 2 holes on one side, 1 hole on the other. You're going to want those 2 holes pointed to the operator's right-hand side, or as it's facing you off here to the left side. Okay, so that's your pre-assembly. Let's go ahead and go through the removal of the stock dust collection chute on the saw. So as usual when working with power tool, you want to make sure it's completely unplugged. The first thing I'm going to need to do is remove this guard bracket here. This is a T25 Torx screw right here. So I've already got my T25 loaded up. I'm just going to back out this bushing like so. And this bar is going to want to fall down once you remove this. So be careful not to lose the bushing or the machine screw. Just set that aside. You will reuse it later. Okay. Next, you'll see the saw is in the up position. If this is in the down position, the screws on the other side will be unable to be accessed. We're going to access these screws on both sides, and we're going to access these screws here. I'm going to actually switch out to a T20 Torx bit, and I'm going to remove the 4 screws that hold this stock port in place. So on this side, there's 2 of them right here. Just going to back these out, and we will be reusing these. So I'm going to set them aside. Now let's take a look at the other side of the saw. Okay, here you can see the other screws right here. Cord's kind of blocking it a little bit, but we're just going to remove these. Again, we're saving the screws. Okay, now at this point in time, if you haven't already done so, lock this bushing down so that it doesn't slide front to back. You're going to want to keep the saw in the up position, and this is going to slide forward and down. There's these tracks right here that are lined up on some runners. And so if you ever need to reinsert this, you kind of lift up and slide it rearward. So now the stock chute is out of there. So again, we're setting aside the screws from the stock chute, and we're going to be reusing 3 of them. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do, we're going to remove these 4 screws. There's 2 on this side and 2 on the other side that hold this steel rear kickback guard in place. For that, I'm going to change bits from T20 to T25, okay? So I'm gonna first remove these 2 screws right here. I'm just making sure I got a good camera angle. I'm gonna remove these 2 screws. Now we will not be reusing these. So if you want to save them for in case you ever resell your saw, you may want to put a piece of masking tape around them and label what that goes to. You can see we're gonna be replacing them with these longer screws that you can get from my Etsy or Shopify as a parts kit. You can see that these longer screws have to pass through this plastic, pass through the casting, and then thread into the steel. And these stock ones just aren't long enough to do all 3. Okay, so I'm going to turn the saw around and we'll remove those other screws. Let's make sure we're locked. Okay, so here you can see these other 2 screws. We're just going to remove them. Now remember, as we remove these, this thing's going to become loose and it's going to want to fall out of there. I'm just going to catch it as it falls. Try not to block the camera angle. And this removes like that. Now I'm going to switch over to my 4mm Allen wrench, and I'm going to grab my socket head cap screws, and I'm going to pre-assemble this part and this part. Okay, so this is the way this open end here goes forward, and this is going to sit around it like that, and those holes are going to line up. You can see that? And then this space right here is going to clamp the casting. So this is what's going to clamp this assembly to your saw's casting, okay? And these screws are just going to pass through. I hope that's auto-focusing. They're going to pass through and thread into there. So now I'm going to slide this up inside the saw. Oh. Now's the great time, if you haven't already, to clamp your guard out of the way. It's going to want to fall down otherwise and just kind of get in your way. So go ahead and clamp it up and out of the way. And we're going to insert this. Again, I'm trying not to block the camera angle. Up inside like that. And I'm going to start off by just finger tightening or inserting some screws there and getting them lined up. Finger tight. Just so I can move things around and get all 4 of these holes lined up. It can be a little tricky sometimes. I actually think it's easier to start on the other side, but for ease of recording, I'm doing this side first. So I'm just going to spin it around here. Start these other 2 screws. By hand. Make sure everything's lined up really well. Now that I've got all these screws in and lined up, I'm going to push up on this so that it's up against the casting, and I'm just going to tighten these down. So I'm actually forgetting, I may have said on camera that the parts kit's going to come with 4 of these screws. It actually comes with 6. I'm forgetting the other 2 screws for holding the primary chute in place. So this has a little bit of a quick disconnect design in case you ever run into a clearance issue for the primary chute. So it just slides up in there and then is secured with these 2 cap screws. And you can make these finger tight, but I recommend kind of using an Allen wrench to get them tight. So I'm going to do this one, and then we'll spin it around and put the other one in place here. Get that nice and tight. And you can see that that chute is on there very tightly. Okay, so now the last thing we're going to do, we're going to reuse these screws, these regular coarse threaded screws. And we're going to switch back to our T20 Torx bit here. And we're going to reuse 3 of them to attach this piece of plastic up into here. So I'm going to pull this hose a little bit and pass it through here. And then I'll retract it a little bit. I hope you can see that okay. And we're going to line up those holes right there and start one of these screws into the plastic. Try and do this one-handed. You can see the plastic's lined up. And I'm just going to start those screws right into the plastic there. I'll do the 2 on this side first. And I'll do the 1 on the far side. Let's go ahead and spin it around so you can see. On this side, it'll be this lower screw here. Get it lined up. All right. Now, last but not least, gonna switch back to the T25 and reinstall this guide bushing for your guard. Tighten that on up. Now we can remove the spring clamp. And you can see how good of a job Jim did here with having it. So this natural offshoot angle directly channels the dust into this tube, and it provides some active suction. So we've also done a little bit of prototyping. This is very similar in function and form to the DeWalt 12-inch slider. And so we may redesign this in the future to come up and pass through here, just like our DeWalt model did. We did a little bit of prototyping from this direction before, and found it was a little bit suboptimal because you're trying to redirect some of that dust. But this does a really good job of getting active collection right in there where you need it. There's 2 kind of modes of collection. One is passive, where this blade is already spinning at 4,000 RPMs and throwing that dust at like 200 feet per second. So if you miss that direction where it's throwing dust at 200 feet per second, you're going to miss it completely, and it's going to become airborne in a cloud or go back behind the saw. The other part is active collection, where it's important to get real close into the blade here and strip away those fine dusts which can follow the blade and become airborne in other ways. So this does a really good job of getting active collection all the way up in there. And there's a proprietary kind of thing inside there that I'm not going to really talk about too much, that does a really good job of kind of modifying that airstream to allow for that to happen. So anyhow, you may see a redesign of this in the future, but for now, this is absolutely a lot better than the stock. I am going to do some demo videos, but I'm going to come back and edit that in to a future release of this install video. So I know you're going to want to see this in action, and I'll be working to get some demos recorded and get them out there, and then I'll ultimately re-edit this install video to match with that. But for now, that's where we're gonna leave it, just due to some travel I've got, and I hope you like it. Hey, so I hope you enjoyed the video. If you're new here, I'm gonna throw a subscribe button right above me. Feel free to click it if this is something you're interested in. I'll have lots more videos like it. I'm gonna put a couple videos over here to my right that I think you'll enjoy. Feel free to check them out. If you found some value in this video, hit the thumbs up button. It helps this video do a little bit better. So do your comments. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on this video or your tips that go along with it. Thanks again for watching all the way to the end of the video, and I'll see you in the next one.